Welcome to Pleasurology Island. I'm Free Thought Steve, a happy realist. You know what it means to be a realist? I believe that observable reality is real, and we can know observable reality. But anything beyond or outside of observable reality that we cannot observe, either with our senses or our scientific instruments, anything beyond observable reality we know nothing about, because we have no way of knowing about anything that we cannot observe. And so what should we believe about anything beyond observable reality? We should believe exactly one thing: nothing at all. That we know nothing at all. We should believe nothing at all as true about non-observable reality. Anything is possible in non-observable reality, but we can never know that anything particular is true about non-observable reality. So if you want to believe in benevolent forces in non-observable reality, if you want to believe that the universe is benevolent toward us, but we just we don't know about it. The universe is shy, kind of hiding, and it's helping us out, but it's doing so without our being able to identify when it is doing so. We can believe that as a possibility because it might make us feel more relaxed, calm, and that's what we want. We want to not be anxious. We want to be calm. So we can believe that the universe is benevolent. What I believe is this: if there is anything beyond observable reality, I expect that it is benevolent, not malevolent. That if there were something that created the universe, it went to all the trouble of creating a universe with 400 billion galaxies, and billions of stars in each galaxy, and billions of planets. Even if there's only one life-supporting planet for each of the galaxies in the universe, our own universe, the 400 billion galaxies, that would be 400 billion life-supporting planets. And if the universe as a whole has some kind of emotional attitude toward these 400 billion life-supporting planets, I would hope that the universe, if there was any intelligent force that made it come into being, that intelligent force would have made it come into being for the purpose of us enjoying our lives. But that can be the only conceivable purpose, because anything that's powerful enough to create a universe of 400 billion galaxies obviously does not need us to tell it it's great. It should have enough self-worth, if it has the power to create a universe with 400 billion galaxies, that it doesn't need us little human beings saying to it, yeah, you're really awesome. And I want you to know that I think that, so that you'll be nice to me. The universe doesn't need to be flattered. If the universe is benevolent, if there do happen to be benevolent unseen forces helping us out, then they're going to help us out because they are benevolent. Benevolent means having goodwill towards us. And so we can expect the benevolent forces to help us out, particularly when we are acting benevolently with goodwill towards our fellow human beings and the other creatures on the planet. So if we're doing that, then we can expect that if there are unobservable forces in the universe and they are benevolent, then they'll be helping us out. If there are no such forces, we're on our own. And that's all that we know. We know that we're on our own here on the planet. We know that we make things happen. We human beings make things happen to ourselves and to each other. And that's what we know as true and real. So a realist believes that we human beings are in charge of our own destiny on this planet. And we really should not expect any help from from anything beyond the observable reality. We shouldn't expect any kind of help. We can hope that we'll get help if we're acting benevolently, but we shouldn't count on it. We should count on ourselves. If we're going to cross the street, we should not count on benevolent unseen forces to protect us from the traffic. We should look both ways very carefully several times and wait until it's safe before we cross the street and take that responsibility on ourselves. And that's the kind of responsibility that as free human beings, not subject to invisible powers of any sort, but making our own decisions for our own lives, we should take the responsibility to look both ways before we cross the street. And in anything else, any other activities we might engage in that contain a realistic risk, like having sex with somebody, when realistically we know there's an epidemic of STDs out there, we have to look both ways before we cross that street of sex. We need to be careful and make our own decisions intelligently and be responsible for our own decisions and for the outcomes of our decisions, and not rely on magic, okay? Relying on unobservable reality is relying on magic. And we should be grown up enough to know that that's just gambling. That's just relying on chance. And that's letting our destiny get out of our own control and just letting whatever goes on out there determine what happens to us. We should make our own decisions and be responsible for them. And one of those decisions, of course, after we have left the realm of make-believe, after we have left Christianity behind, left behind the fairy tale worldview of Christianity that is made up of pure imagination, it's our own emotional brains that have told us we want to leave that worldview behind. We've already made that decision emotionally. All right, we no longer want to live with all the stress and anxiety and tension that Christianity puts in our lives. And once we get rid of it, it's such a relief not to be performing our lives for some imaginary perfect being that demands a level of perfection from us that is completely unrealistic. We human beings, each of us, we're all blundering through life, doing the best we can with the knowledge that we happen to have, but our knowledge is imperfect, our emotions are imperfect, and it's our emotions that drive us. And so oftentimes we do things that have bad consequences because our emotions drove us to do those things. And we're all blundering our way through life, so we're all making mistakes, but hopefully we're learning from our mistakes, learning to not repeat the same mistake. And what we're trying to do, of course, is learn how to be happy realists. We're learning how to be happy without relying upon fairy tale stories to make us generate euphoria. See, our emotional brain, inside our brain here, the emotional brain on the inside, the red area there, that's the area that makes us feel good or bad. Now that area, the emotional brain, will make us feel good in response to fairy tales if we believe those fairy tales are true. If you believe that the Christian fairy tale is true and you believe you're going to go to heaven when you die and live forever up there in total bliss, that will create a certain amount of euphoria in your brain. And that's real euphoria. And so that's what keeps Christianity addictive to people, because they say, I don't want to die. I don't want my life to end. I want my life to go on forever. And so I'm going to believe that it will go on forever. and I'm going to believe in God, I'm going to believe in Jesus, I'm going to believe in heaven, and I'm going to believe in hell, but I'm going to hope I'm not going to go there. And I'm going to follow all the rules that people tell me God and Jesus want me to follow. Now, the problem with that is that we can't actually talk to God and Jesus because they are imaginary people. There was a guy named Joshua of Galilee who once lived and was an apocalyptic prophet and got crucified by the Romans. That guy actually lived, but the Jesus that Christianity talks about is an imaginary creation based upon that real historical personage. But the imaginary creation and his imaginary father, God, those are creations of the human imagination. Nobody can show them to us. They're part of unobservable reality. And as long as they remain part of unobservable reality, we should believe absolutely nothing about them. We should certainly not believe they're true. It is a false truth claim. Anytime anyone claims that an imaginary person like God or Jesus that we cannot observe truly exists, that's a false truth claim. It's a truth claim. It's a claim about what is true that is not based on evidence. It's based on wishful thinking and wishful imagining and choosing to believe that a certain book full of ancient manuscripts is the word of the imaginary being that we can't talk to and ask him, say, is this really, is this book really how you want us to behave? This imaginary being, God, is supposed to be the same being that created this 400 billion galaxy universe. And there may be other universes out there, it may be a multiverse. And we cannot talk with the being that created all that stuff if there was any being at all. As far as we know, all that stuff may have come into being just as a result of natural physical laws, with no intelligence behind it whatsoever, with no planning. It just worked out this way, and we're lucky that it did, because it's really a cool world. It's a really beautiful world, and we know that's true. We know that this world is a beautiful, amazing planet, and the way that it allows life forms to grow on it. This is reality. This we know. And so we can be very happy that we are living on such a beautiful planet, but we should also be responsible for taking care of that beautiful planet. We shouldn't expect unobservable stuff beyond reality to take care of the planet for us. That's our responsibility. We know that we are real living beings doing real things to the planet. And it's up to us to make intelligent decisions in order not to wreck this beautiful, beautiful planet that we happen to have been lucky enough to be born on. Now, after we've left Christianity, what we want to do is be happy. And that doesn't come automatically just by stopping believing in Christianity. I know that. I stopped believing in Christianity when I was 16 or 17 years old and went off to college and didn't believe in Christianity, but I wasn't happy. And I thought, as probably most people think, that what I need to be happy is to get all my needs met. I need to be able to get a job and survive. I need to find somebody to love. And then, when those needs are met, then I will be happy. And that's what we are sort of educated to believe. Our society tells us just get your needs met and you will be happy. And what I found out in my own personal life is that that is not a complete truth. We do need to get our needs met. We need to feel we belong to a community, or we belong to a family, or we belong to a group of friends. We need to feel like we're part of a little human community of some sort so that we're not lonely. And it's wonderful to have a pair bond partner whom we're in love with. And it's wonderful to have our sexual needs met with that pair bond partner. It's wonderful to get our sexual needs met even if we don't have a pair bond partner. It's wonderful to be able to take care of our own sex drive with solo sex and fully satisfy our sex drive so that we are not dependent upon anybody else to satisfy our sex drive. And that's one of the wonderful things about being a human being, is that we can, in fact, masturbate, and masturbate so well, if we learn how to do it, that we can thoroughly satisfy our sex drive, even if we're not in a partner sex relationship. And that's a very useful thing, because we don't want to enter into partner sex relationships just to get affection, just to have a feeling of belongingness and connectedness and nurturing from other human beings. We should be able to get that need met without having to be in a romantic relationship with someone, because we all need that kind of nurturing affection in order to help us calm down and feel less anxious, and to give us a feeling of joie de vivre. And so, in order to get that, it's important for post-Christians to form a post-Christian counterculture, because the Christian culture basically starves us for nurturing affection, and after we've left the church community, we get even less nurturing affection in the secular culture. We need to create a post-Christian counterculture where we can give each other the nurturing affection we need. And so I feel that post-Christians should form what I like to call as tender nests. And I like to say, try a little tender nest. A tender nest is like 3 or more people who meet together and socialize for the purpose of giving each other nurturing affection. Nurturing affection is one of the basic needs of the human being. And you can have a lot of sex, but if you don't have real nurturing affection, you won't feel satisfied. In the emotional brain here, there's a certain set of circuits that are the nurturing circuits. And those circuits make us feel euphoric. Those circuits are activated when we're a baby, when our mother or our father or our brother and sister or an aunt and uncle, somebody is holding us close to their body and enfolding us with their arms so that we feel totally safe and totally nurtured. We feel loved. Someone's taking care of us. Our emotional brain knows that there's someone there loving us. And that activates these nurturing circuits in our emotional brain. And so as we grow up, we lose the ability to get that physical nurturing affection from other people. People quit holding us as we grow up. If we get hugs, they're very brief hugs, usually, and they feel good. What's good, like, is, you got to sit on your parents' lap, your mother or father's lap, and they would read to you, and you would be snuggled up, resting back against them on the sofa, and they would have their arms around you and read to you. And so you had a feeling of safety if you were lucky and got that kind of nurturing parenting from your parents. If your parents happened to be nurturing, affectionate parents, which they may or may not have been, I don't know. If they were, that's a good thing, because then as our emotional brain grew up when we were little children, our emotional brain would feel safe during the first few years of life, the first 2, 3, 4 years of life, when the emotional brain is really growing and developing. if it can develop a habit of feeling safe and nurtured and protected by affectionate parents, then that keeps us calmer as we grow up. We stay calmer. If we are denied that, we get anxious. Anxiety is the feeling of not being safe, not being nurtured, and feeling lonely, feeling alone, and feeling frightened by being alone, particularly when we're children, because we're small and the world is big and we don't understand the world and we don't know how to manipulate the world or navigate the world very well. The world's a frightening place. So we can grow up lonely and anxious, or we can grow up nurtured and more relaxed as a foundation for our emotional personality. Because our emotional brain learns, just like our intellectual brain learns things like mathematics or language or whatever, our emotional brain learns feelings, and it learns to feel relaxed and nurtured, or it learns to feel anxious and lonely. And as we grow up all through our life, we have emotional learning that takes place. And unfortunately, we don't get this nurturing affection that we need after a certain age. People think, well, kids grow up, they don't need nurturing affection anymore. But that's not true. We grow up, and most of the time, there's a lot of pressures on us that make us grow up anxious. And particularly if we've grown up in a Christian environment, there's a lot of demands placed on us, and it stresses us to try and be as perfect as all those demands want us to be. Okay, follow all these rules, don't do this, don't do that, particularly don't do anything sexual. And we can grow up with a lot of conflict and anxiety and tension about that. And when we grow up, we need the feeling of being nurtured and safe. And one of the easiest ways to get that is to take opioids. Opioids, in fact, act upon the nurturing circuits of the emotional brain. That is, the opioids make us feel safe and calm because this chemical acts upon the nerve circuits that are the same nerve circuits that used to become active when we were being held by a parent. So people talk about the opioid experience as like being wrapped in a warm blanket and being very comfortable and losing our chronic sense of anxiety. But of course there are problems with using opioids, which is that they're highly addictive and withdrawal from them is difficult, and it's easy to overdose on an opioid and die. Now, what could we use to activate our nurturing affection circuits in the emotional brain without taking opioids? Well, nurturing affection. That's what the emotional brain is meant to respond to. When the emotional brain feels that we are being nurtured, then it activates the nurturing nerve circuits, and that creates the feeling of safety and calmness in our consciousness. So how do we get nurturing affection? If we have a tender nest of 3 people or more, the best form of nurturing there are 2 great forms of nurturing. The first one is a sandwich hug. A sandwich hug is just what the name suggests. One person's in the middle and 2 people are on the outside. One is hugging them from behind, one is hugging them from in front, and the person is in the middle. And this is direct nurturing affection that feels absolutely wonderful. And if you relax into it, now if you're tense, it won't work. If you're frightened of it, it won't work. You've got to say, okay, there's nothing scary about being hugged. Okay, nothing bad can happen to me. from being hugged by someone else, even by two people, okay? I feel perfectly safe. I trust these two people. They're not going to take advantage of how good the sandwich hug makes me feel, to get me to engage in sexual activities. A tender nest is not for the purpose, specifically, of creating erotic experiences. It can be for that. We can use the tender nest for creating a certain type of erotic experience, but that's not what we're doing when we're doing nurturing affection. We have an agreement among the three of us that these sandwich hugs are just hugs. These are nurturing affection hugs. And you see, this is the problem in our society, is that the only way to get nurturing affection as an adult is to be in a sexual or a romantic relationship with someone. And so people look for romantic relationships primarily in order to get nurturing affection, but they're willing to exchange sexual favors in order to get nurturing affection. And we want to move beyond that. We don't want our romantic relationships to be based on an unmet need for nurturing affection. We should meet our need for nurturing affection first, and do that amply with sandwich hugs in a tender nest. And everybody gets to take a different turn being in the middle, okay? So that each person gets to have the euphoric feeling of being enclosed in human affection, in human love, in human caring. That is one of the most wonderful feelings in the world. And it's different from sexual satisfaction. It's different from the best orgasm that you can have in the world. The best orgasm you can have in the world is a wonderful euphoric experience all of its own. But it's not the same as the wonderful nurturing affection experience of a sandwich hug. And a sandwich hug is very safe. You don't pass STDs or anything like that, as long as nobody's got a head cold or any other kind of contagious, breath contagious virus. As long as everybody's healthy, a nice sandwich hug is completely safe. If everybody's clothed, it's not a problem. And that will activate those nurturing affection circuits. And when those nurturing affection circuits are activated, they will release opioids into our bloodstream. But they are the opioids that our own brain produces. And so they're not something that we actually get addicted to, although I think sandwich hugs could be highly addictive emotionally. We could really develop a need for sandwich hugs. And if we got sandwich hugs whenever we needed them on a frequent basis, then we would have a wonderful, joyous opioid experience without any physical withdrawal symptoms afterward, because we're not introducing artificial chemicals into the brain. We are letting the brain release its own internal opioids. And that just makes us feel good, and it makes us healthier. So to have a sandwich hug habit is actually health promoting. I think if everybody got sandwich hugs every day, or 3 times a week, or at least once a week, anytime the tender nest can get together, those folks who got the sandwich hugs, their overall health throughout their life would be much, much better. Because when the emotional brain is feeling good, feeling euphoric, it's not just releasing opioids and giving us a euphoric feeling in consciousness. At the same time, the emotional brain is actually acting on our immune system to strengthen our immune system and to strengthen our ability to resist infection from outside. And that's not just phony baloney, wishful thinking. It's not wishful thinking. It's not New Age imaginary stuff, okay? It's actual science that the emotional brain releases hormones into the body that go to the gland that secretes all of our antibodies to help us fight against infection. There's an actual physical chemical connection between the emotional brain releasing certain chemicals that go to the immune system control center and cause it to function better and to release more antibodies and make us stronger and more resistant to any kind of infection. So our health will be better. Our health will be better in many ways because the sandwich hug, when it creates nurturing affection, it relaxes the whole emotional brain. When we feel safe, we are relaxed. And when we are relaxed, our blood pressure goes down, our heart rate slows down, our digestion improves and works more naturally. And our whole body, in fact, is changed by the output from our emotional brain. Our emotional brain sends output to the body in two ways that are important: the autonomic nervous system and the hormone system. The hormones are chemicals, like I just talked about, that go to the immune system, but they go throughout the entire body, and they act on cells and organs throughout the entire body. So when the emotional brain relaxes, it sends out different chemicals throughout the body that cause the way the whole body functions to change and to improve and to slow down and conserve its energy. And instead of being burned out, when we get all nervous and hyped up, and if we take a lot of stimulants like a lot of coffee or cocaine or speed, meth, anything like that that ramps up our activity, that is creating like a faster heart rate, higher blood pressure, worse digestion, problems with digestion, and emergency functioning in the immune system that tends to wear the immune system out and reduce our resistance to disease. So calming the emotional brain with nurturing affection like sandwich hugs calms down the autonomic nervous system, and that calms down our heart rate and blood pressure. I've got a picture here. This is the autonomic nervous system. You see, it's not something I made up. All those red lines are nerves going to all the different parts of the body. You know, the lungs here, the heart, the liver, all through the body. You can see going down there and to the sex organs, because it's the autonomic nervous system that, in fact, causes erection, or the lack of erection causes vaginal lubrication, or the absence of vaginal lubrication. And so the autonomic nervous system, being under control of the emotional brain, will change everything that's happening in the body, throughout the body, depending on the mood that the emotional brain is in. So if we want to be happy in a post-Christian, realistic happiness world, we need to nurture our emotional brain with nurturing affection from other people. And the other thing that we can do besides sandwich hugs is clothes on massage. Now, obviously, some kinds of massage can be erotic massages. Some kinds of massage can be for deep muscle relaxation. If we have sore muscles, then you want to have a massage where your skin is bare and there is oil on the skin, and the person massages you with their hands. And that's a wonderful kind of massage, which does not have to be an erotic massage. It can be simply a muscle relaxing massage, which is also, of course, very relaxing emotionally. But it's a bit messy to have massage oil all over the place. And when people get undressed for a massage, then that opens the door to possible sexual activity, and therefore the person who is getting the massage may not be able to relax completely if they're worried that the masseur is going to start massaging them erotically, and if that's not what they're there for. But if you just want nurturing affection, you keep your clothes on and you don't use any oil, and if you've got a tender nest of 3 people, then you get 2 people to massage whoever's lying on the floor. And the person lies on the floor face down, and the other 2 people can massage them all over their body. You should be wearing something like a sweatshirt and sweatpants, that's all, so that you're covered down to the wrists and ankles, and if you want to wear socks, that's fine too. And that way, you can totally relax and say, okay, this is not going to be a sexual massage. We have this agreement among the 3 of us in the tender nest that when we're doing nurturing affection massages, clothed massages, that we're not doing them as an erotic arousal thing. We're doing them as a nurturing affection thing. All we're trying to do is make each other feel loved and safe and cared for. What we're doing is we're being the parents that our own parents maybe were or were not when we were children, but we are now saying we are being the parents for each other. We're all the same age, but we are giving each other the kind of nurturing affection that we used to get from our parents, hopefully, but maybe we never did. But we can give it to each other now, and by gently stroking the person's body all over with just affectionate caresses, the same way you might pet a cat, stroke a cat or a dog, with very relaxed hands, and learning to let your hands smoothly glide over the person's body. And you can glide it over their hips, up and down, so that you don't have to ignore the middle of their body, but you don't get intrusive about getting between their legs and touching their genitals or anything like that, because that might make them tense. And that's not what this is for. This is relaxation massage, nurturing affection. And you say, well, Steve, nobody does that. Nobody does sandwich hugs, and nobody does this clothes on. Nobody that I know does this clothes on massage and so forth. It's too different. Well, that's what I'm saying, is that we need a post-Christian counterculture. You see, when we were back in the 1960s and 70s, in the midst of the counterculture, we were doing all kinds of things that nobody in straight society was doing, including massages and sandwich hugs. And that's where I learned that, was back in the counterculture days. So that's why I'm saying we need a post-Christian counterculture to remedy the emotional damage that was done to us by growing up in a Christian upbringing, a Christian atmosphere, where there was so much pressure and tension put on us to suppress our sexuality, to always be perfect and nice and never be angry at anybody, and to always obey whatever the adults told us to do, because Christianity is a religion of obedience, and it didn't allow us to develop as independent individuals unless we revolted against Christianity and rebelled against it, in which case we got punished for it. We got people angry at us and shaming us for it. And that increased our emotional tension. So there was no way not to become emotionally tensed, whether we were obedient or whether we were rebels. Growing up in a Christian atmosphere, we grew emotionally tense. And that emotional tension became a lifelong habit, an everyday habit, built into our body, because that's how our emotional brain had been taught to work. growing up in that kind of a stressful environment, a Christian environment, caused us to activate the anxiety circuits in our emotional brain and the anger circuits in our emotional brain. And the anxiety circuits are fear circuits. And we developed a habit of constant inner emotional tension. And that is why we need a post-Christian counterculture like these tendernests that I'm suggesting, where we give each other the kind of emotional and physical experiences that will change the way our emotional brain operates. What we need to do is learn a different habit of operating our emotional brain. And you may say to me, Steve, that's something I've never heard anybody suggest, that you try and change the way you operate your own brain? Absolutely, absolutely. The way that our brain operates now is the result of learning that we've done throughout our entire life. We weren't aware of this emotional learning as it was happening to us. We may have been aware of being shamed or being traumatized or losing a pet that we loved or some, certain emotional experiences being made to feel sinful in the eyes of God. We were aware that we were having all these unpleasant emotional experiences, sexual guilt after masturbating, whatever it might be. We were aware that we were having these unpleasant emotional experiences, but we didn't realize that our emotional brain was going through a whole process of learning to feel shame and guilt, anxiety and fear and anger, and loneliness. We didn't realize that our emotional brain was gradually learning a habit of anxiety and tension. And so, to have a post-Christian, happy realist life, we have to do some real re-education of our emotional brain. It's what I call a program of emotional renovation. Just like you might go in and renovate a house and make it all different and more beautiful than it was before, that's what has to happen with our emotional brain, is we need to renovate and renew our emotional brain so that it will generate euphoria. And before we can generate euphoria, meaning good feelings in our consciousness, first we have to relax. Relaxation is the foundation for euphoria. And part of relaxation is releasing the tension and distress energy that was built into our emotional memory banks by all of the negative experiences we've had in our life. We have unexpressed anger, we have unexpressed sadness, we have unexpressed fear, unexpressed anxiety, unexpressed resentment. We have a lot of feelings, and what we need to do is release those unexpressed feelings. That's part of relaxation. And the way that it works is, first we relax our muscles throughout our body with muscle relaxing exercises. And we're doing this nurturing affection with the sandwich hugs and the clothes on massage. We're doing the nurturing affection, but we're also doing these easy relaxation exercises, and I have a whole bunch of them that I will put on other videos, that you can learn. I've been doing them since 1972. That's like 53 years. And so I know a lot of them by now. I've kept learning new ones, and I'm inventing new ones all the time. But basically, we learn to relax our muscles. And then, and this is another counterculture activity that, straight society doesn't do, then we get high on cannabis. Now, you may be getting high on cannabis already, or you may have tried cannabis but had a bad experience with it, because if you've got a lot of Christian programming in your head, then cannabis can release some negative feelings, some paranoia and fear of God, fear of hell, and unpleasant feelings of guilt and anxiety. And there are ways to counteract that. What we have to realize is that these feelings that we're feeling are just there because we've been indoctrinated to believe in the imaginary. And when we get high, if we start believing in the imaginary, then it can release unpleasant feelings of fear and paranoia. So there are meditation techniques that we can use to gain control of our thought process, so that if we get high and we're thinking paranoid thoughts of any sort, whether we're worried that the police are going to come bust us, or anything, or worried that we're going to go to hell, because we don't believe in God anymore. All these imaginary ideas, we can learn to say, okay, those are not really happening. Let me be in the present moment, and let me be responding to what is actually happening right here and right now. And so we should always use the psychedelics, cannabis or any of the other psychedelics, in situations where we are realistically safe, where when we look around us, everything is comforting and familiar or beautiful. I like to get high out in nature, because the beauty of nature always just makes me feel absolutely safe and wonderful. That was what made me feel safe in the universe. The very first time I took LSD was going outside and looking at the beauty of this natural place that I happened to be in. There it was a lovely place. It was not way out in nature, but it nevertheless had lots of beautiful trees and sky and a little lake, and it was really a lovely spot. And that's what made me say, I don't have to be afraid of the universe. I don't have to be afraid of God out there, a mean God out there, because this world is so beautiful and so lovely that I don't have to be afraid of whatever created it, if there was anything that created it. If it's there all just because of natural laws, then that's wonderful, because it's absolutely beautiful. But if there was some creative force behind it, I don't have to be afraid of it, because the world is so beautiful. That it would be it must be a benevolent forces. If there were any forces that created the world, they must be benevolent, because the world is such a beautiful place, and life is such an amazing thing. So the point about cannabis is, though, that if you do these muscle relaxing exercises for a long time, for several weeks, for a month or more, and then you get high, it's very easy. It's very easy to allow the internal stress emotions that we have not expressed until now, allow ourselves to express those emotions. They will start flowing out of us spontaneously. We may start crying spontaneously, or it will be very easy for us to get angry or to express fear. The psychedelics and cannabis allow emotions that have been kept down to bubble up and surge up kind of spontaneously. And this is a great therapeutic technique that no one, as far as I know, has talked about or promoted, which is the use of muscle relaxing exercises, because tense muscles are one way of keeping emotions suppressed. That's what Wilhelm Reich, R-E-I-C-H, Wilhelm Reich, the psychoanalyst back in the 1930s, realized, was that chronic tension in the muscles of the body is the way that we keep our unexpressed emotions stuffed down. So doing this combination of muscle relaxing exercises and then getting high on cannabis, which as a mild psychedelic makes the boundary between the emotions and the expression of emotions a more permeable boundary. That is, the emotions can flow out through that boundary, and the emotions can flow out and be expressed in a natural way. And this is another important function of the tenderness, because it's important for us to express our emotions to other people and be heard as we tell about something maybe that was very sad in our childhood or something that made us angry. We need to be able to talk that out with other people and let those emotions that we've kept hidden inside us, let them come out and talk about them and express those feelings. If it was sexual guilt, be able to talk about what made us feel sexually guilty and how we shouldn't, and be reassured by our fellow tenderness members, our tender nesters. We should be reassured by them that it was okay for us to feel sexy in that way and to do those things sexually that we happen to do, and to be completely non-judgmental about other people's sexual experience. Just allow them, because all of us have been driven to our sexual experiences by our emotional brain. The sex drive is very, very strong in the human being. And whatever sexual experiences we've had, in general, we've been driven to by our emotional brains. Or it's possible that somebody else was driven to seduce us as a child and seduce us into some kind of sexual activity with them that really frightened us because we weren't choosing it for ourselves. There was an adult who was satisfying their own sexual need through us, which is a very selfish and unethical thing to do, but that adult was driven to it because we human beings have such a strong sex drive, and because we live in a fundamentally Christian society where sex has been forced to be hidden and denied to everybody as much as possible. We live in a society of sexual deprivation, and when people are sexually deprived, their emotional brain drives them to find some kind of sexual satisfaction, even if it's prohibited by society. So we might have been a victim of that as a child. And we may have never told anybody about it, and that keeping that secret about this sexual thing that happened to us that kind of traumatized us, keeping that secret from other people creates internal tension in the emotional brain. It creates tension and prevents us from relaxing and prevents us from being happy. So it's important that we be able to talk about these things with fellow tender nesters who are dedicated, who are pledged to giving us unconditional positive regard, complete acceptance without any conditions on it, but continuing to regard us as a wonderful person, as a good human being, for whom we feel love and affection. Our tender nesters we pledge ourselves to give that to each other, unconditional acceptance, so that we can talk about the things that we haven't been able to talk about before. Anything that we need to talk about that we haven't talked about before, we have to talk about it and feel the emotions that are connected with it in order to then be able to relax. We have to be able to release our unexpressed emotions in order to relax. And so there are other ways of doing that I'll talk about another time, particularly play acting, emotional theater, which is designed where you set up a situation where it's maybe designed to release anger or to express fear and terror or pain or sorrow. You set up a little play acting skit and you act it out in role play, and this allows you to express whatever emotions you haven't been able to express, because it's important for our emotional brain to unlearn the emotional inhibitions that we have been taught by our society. We've been taught not to express our emotions, to keep them inside. We need to unlearn that inhibition and learn how to release them. So theater scenes, and another great thing, bataka battles. A bataka is a big foam club on a stick with a hand guard. And it's like a sword that's about that big around. It's covered with soft velour or some other soft cloth, and it's made out of foam rubber. And so you can clobber somebody with a bataka as hard as you want, and it'll just bounce off them, and it won't hurt them. And so you can express your anger to someone else, even if it's not somebody, it's not somebody that you're really angry at, but you're just doing this role playing in order to get out anger. And you just clobber each other with the bataka as hard as you want, as often as you want, and you just keep going till you're exhausted and you don't have any more anger left. But you've been able to express your anger by hitting that person as hard as you want. And they hit you back. And you can yell and shout and just get as angry as you want and release that anger. And the thing that's nice about releasing anger is that we feel our own personal power when we release anger. When we're not allowed to release our anger, we feel angry but powerless. We're surrounded by people who, if we expressed our anger, would throw us in jail or beat us up or do something bad to us, fire us from our job, whatever. And so we keep that anger inside. We feel powerless but furious that we're powerless. Being powerless makes a person feel furious. So if in the bataka battle, we get to feel our power, we get to feel just how hard we would hit somebody if we were really angry at them and allowed ourselves to hit them as hard as we wanted to. We can experience our own personal physical power in a bataka battle without hurting anybody else. And we're doing it with someone who is in voluntary agreement with us. We have made an agreement we're going to let out our anger on each other and get it out of our systems. Because anger is just a poison that poisons our own emotional brain, and it poisons our relationships with other people if we're not allowed to express it. Because it will come out, we'll lose our temper at unexpected moments, and we'll snap at them, we'll be irritable. And then we'll be angry at ourselves for losing our temper at them and making them feel bad, and angry at ourselves because we want to apologize, but we don't want to apologize because that's too humiliating, whatever. And that's how we feel if that anger is poisoning our emotional brain because it has never been released. So releasing anger in a bataka battle is a wonderful thing, and you can order batakas on the internet. It's spelled B-A-T-A-K-A, bataka, a bataka. And so bataka battles are wonderful because after you have finished having your bataka battle and getting your anger out, then you feel like laughing because you feel wonderful, you feel purified. That poison is expelled from my system. And I feel so clean and so fresh and so energetic from having gotten rid of all that anger. And it's so great to get rid of it. Let it get out. Don't hold it inside. But, and so tenderness is invaluable for letting out anger. And then after we've done whatever kind of emotional release we've done, fear, sorrow, anger, whatever it is, then we go back to nurturing affection. We go back to sandwich hugs. We go back to showing each other how much we love each other. Going back to clothed-on massages, where everybody gets a chance to be the one who is getting the massage. And so that would provide for us post-Christians a realistic form of human belongingness, which is one of the basic human needs, nurturing affection to help us feel safe and calm, peaceful and serene, which is my favorite mantra. Safe and calm, peaceful and serene. Just you repeat that over and over. And so after all of the emotional catharsis, then, hugs and massage and just cuddling together and maybe watching TV, doesn't matter, doing anything, listening to music and just enjoying being in contact with another human being. So, if you feel suicidal, like I felt really suicidal when I was about 23, and I wanted to kill myself. But in the end, I decided that I was going to accept myself just as I was. I was a failure. I hadn't accomplished the things I wanted. I dropped out of school a bunch of times. I had debts. I was a wreck. I was a mess. I just wanted to end it all. But I decided, no, I'm just going to accept myself the way I am. We have to accept ourselves and love ourselves just the way we are, not the way that we wish we were, because we're not the way that we wish we were yet. We may get there later. But right now, we have to love ourselves just the way we are and accept ourselves and say, yes, of course I'm fucked up. I had a fucked up upbringing. I did not get the nurturing affection I needed. I had people judging me all the time, making me feel like I wasn't good enough, wasn't perfect enough, making me feel I was sinful, because I was masturbating or having sexual thoughts, and all this crazy shit based on, the imaginary Christian worldview. Bullshit. So naturally I'm fucked up. I had a traumatic, I had an emotionally abusive upbringing. Christianity is an emotionally abusive upbringing. So we've all been abused by our upbringing emotionally. And so our emotional brains are not functioning the way they ought to, the way they could have been functioning if we had had a nurturing upbringing instead of an abusive one. So it's up to us to now give ourselves the nurturing in a tenderness. Or if you don't have a tenderness, just love yourself the best you possibly can and say, sometime I'll be able to form a tenderness, sometime I'll be able to have friends that I can make a good connection with. And use social media to form tenderness if you can. But in any case, don't kill yourself until you have tried Free Thought Steve's happiness plan all the way through. And this is just the beginning of the happiness plan, the part that I've told you. That's just sort of like phase 1. And I'll continue on next time with the rest of it. But just love yourself the way that you are right now, as imperfect as you happen to be. And say, okay, I'm not going to kill myself till I've at least heard what Steve's happiness plan is and what I can hope that it will do for me. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.